When do those public health emergencies stop? Never. So you will lose your rights as a human being if you go along with 15-minute cities, including the model is China. They've got central bank digital currency. China, if you go 5 kilometers from your house, guess what? Your money doesn't work. If you didn't take your recent shot, your money doesn't work. If you ate too much meat last month, your money doesn't work. That's what 15-minute cities are about. That's where we're headed.
Todd Callender is an attorney that has worked in the disability, health, and life insurance industry for more than 20 years. And he focuses on the international convergence of biomedical, morbidity, and mortality risks in the global legal context. He currently serves as an executive board member of many multinational companies, and he was responsible for the completion of the FDA's registration process for a new medical device in the mass vaccination industry. He's also currently serving as the CEO of Cloud Hub, a social media company. Todd Callender currently serves as lead plaintiff's counsel in the ongoing federal litigation relating to the compulsory COVID vaccination of members in the U.S. Armed Services. He filed a lawsuit against the DoD, the Department of Defense, and stopped the forced COVID injections against armed services. Todd Callender is also an opponent of 15-minute cities, and he is here to tell us how this all might connect and what to be aware of.
All right, thank you. So Todd,
Beautiful.
Welcome to the Tamar Yonah Show. It's good to have you on.
It's a pleasure.
The first question I want to ask you is if you can explain to our listeners what exactly are 15-minute cities?
Oh, well, they're effectively electronic prisons. So what you will find is the 1994 Cairo Population Accords arrived at the conclusion there are too many people on this planet. And as part of the Rio Climate Accords in 1992, the UN developed what was at the time the Agenda for the 21st Century, later transformed into Agenda 2030, which seeks to rewild mass areas of the planet and force people into, or the remnants of people, what's left of us, into what they call 15-minute cities, very small confined areas. They're city centers where people will be serving out their lives. And I say serving because it's really a prison sentence more than anything for the duration. And they will not be allowed to travel. They will not be allowed to go out into the farmland. They will be given what it is there to eat. They won't own anything, just like Klaus Schwab said. And they effectively will become the chattel property of the patent holders. And I can explain all that to you if you like.
Yeah, please do.
So when I filed the lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Defense, it's because I came from the vaccine industry. I was the first U.S. licensee to do business with Cuba back in the 1990s. It was an enemy nation at the time because my family owns the intellectual property rights to a needle-free mass vaccination device. My job as a lawyer was to get it through the FDA registration process. As part of that, I brought the WHO into Cuba. I also brought Pfizer and other multinationals into Cuba. And for the last 30 years, my family's company has been testing all of the new vaccines that Bill Gates et al. Have been preparing to inject people with. As a function of that, I've had an insight as to what was happening, including the testing of Gardasil that was designed to sterilize people. And I came to understand, having lived outside the United States for my adult life, working in the multinational financial centers of this world, how it all actually comes together and works as it's juxtaposed to Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. When I filed suit against the DoD to stop the shots, because all of the test animals for the previous 20 years they used mRNA technology with died, I couldn't stand by. I knew it was happening. I knew this was an attack on humanity. So I sued the DoD to stop them. As part of that, I came to understand the legal matrix by which the DoD was forcing these shots, not just on service members, but the planet itself. The rollout of COVID-19, the rollout of the shots was a military operation. And the reasoning for that is because it's actually a genetic alteration, transhumanism agenda. The operative case law on this is something called molecular pathology versus myriad genetics. It's a 2013 case. the Supreme Court, good law, is that use of mRNA technology to effectuate gene modification results in the synthetic product belonging to the patent holders. I'm telling you, the people that got the shots, according to existing case law, are number one, a new species, and number two, owned. How and why? The components of the shots, including something called hydrogel, include cesium-137 amongst hundreds of other pathogens and components that result in the transformation of people into transducers, transceivers, amplifiers, and effectively cloud computing devices. We found all of the technology, we found all of the patents that support this, and all of that leads towards a new species of people that are owned property that will fill these 15-minute cities, and they will serve the purposes of the patent holders. In other words, the elite, the World Economic Forum, and the owners of this planet.
Okay, I'm going to stop you here because
sure,
I feel that you have a lot of information that you want to get out to people about
the
COVID-19 shots that they were forcing people to take and all of the other things that surround it. But and maybe I'll have you on another time to talk about that. But I want to focus right now on the 15-minute cities. And I understand that there is a connection to it because when we were under lockdown, people were only allowed to go a few hundred meters from their homes during these lockdowns. And that was, in essence, if you had a dog, you were allowed to walk it. And the thing is, I just want to present this to our listeners. I remember reading years ago, and I wish I had the source for it, but they were saying that they would, they, meaning like intelligence agencies or otherwise, would do a fake kidnapping on the street in daylight. They would just come and grab someone from the street who was a plant and shove them into a car and drive off and see if people would do anything about it.
Sure.
And most people did not do anything about it. And then they learned they can get away with it. And the same thing I feel that happened with this whole episode of the mandates and the lockdowns and the mask wearing and the get vaccinated, you have to have a green pass to be able to get into stores and et cetera. So that all this was also in order to see if people were going to comply. And they did. And they did. And not only did they comply, but it became like what I remember stories from people who came from Russia and the Soviet Union, how people would tattle on other people and think on them because they thought they're doing the right thing, and these people were enemies, and this has destroyed families. I mean, kids used to turn in their parents, and I believe that there was someone in the United States that was saying that they were going to turn in their parents also for something that they were doing during the mandate.
They tried it.
So, so talking about now the 15-minute cities. Now, I'm going to present something to you, but during this interview, I'm also going to play a little bit devil's advocate, because I want you to be able to give arguments why people who might think like this may be wrong. Okay?
Sure.
All right. So the 15-minute cities, some people say that these are actually, they're going to market it as something that is the greatest thing that ever walked the earth. That now we're going to have, we're going to have schools and your job and stores and entertainment, and everything's going to be within a 15-minute walk or bike ride. And you're going to have everything there. And therefore, you're not going to need to get into a car and drive away and make a bigger carbon footprint and pollution and all of these things, because you're going to have everything at your doorstep. And, in a marketing wise scenario, it sounds great. Wow, I won't have to get into my car and drive so far. I'll have a market right downstairs from my apartment. I'll have this, I'll have that. Schools, I won't need school buses anymore because kids can walk to school. It sounds great. I want you to tell us why people say that this is going to be a ghetto for people and actually be open air prisons, which a lot of people are saying it's going to be. So explain.
Well, because it's designed to be. So everything you just said is predicated on a couple of things. Number one of which is that humans are bad. Anthropomorphic carbon is the world's problems. Global warming, climate change, hogwash. It simply isn't true. So all of this is predicated on some need to eliminate humans. You hear Bill Gates himself on TED Talk saying, well, we better get, part of this formula down to zero. All of that arises from the Cairo Population Accords in 1994, where all the nations of the world, effectively 196 countries and territories, agreed 7 billion people need to die. That we need to vanish from the face of this earth. So as you see this rollout of the COVID shots, which are not vaccines at all, they're gene modification devices that ended in terrible tragedy. I don't know how many people have died, but certainly many million people so far have died from these shots. Many millions more will die from the shots. Everything about the 15-minute cities is predicated on people being bad. We need to confine them. We need to harness them and keep them away from the sacred earth, because we're changing it. We're bad custodians and all of those kinds of things. The point of this is all predicated on that one thing, which is humans must be contained. Humans are bad. Humans cause carbon. All of which is a false assumption for their formulas. None of it is true. It's just hyperbole. So if this is where they're coming from, humans are bad, the humans must be gone, and we're all moving to these 15-minute cities where they tell you to mask, you do. They tell you to stay in your house, you do. They tell us that we're living too long, so they start cutting people's lives short. The plans are, if you look at the budget for CMS in the United States and every country like it, you will find that they want us to have 20,000 vaccines in our lifetimes. That's a lot.
20,000 vaccines in our lifetime?
20,000 in our lifetimes. That's what it says. Precisely what I'm saying to you. It's all because, Tamar, humans are bad. They are changing us from humans into a new species. They're all mRNA and adenovirus shots. This is all part of the gene modification program. And the most important part, hang on. The most important part of which is when you are genetically transformed, you are no longer human for purposes of the law, which means you have no rights. Everything you told me about is exactly right. They took away our rights as human beings. How and why? Because they declared a public health emergency, and all the world's laws have focused to this point that they can do anything they want to us based on a public health emergency. When do those public health emergencies stop? Never. So you will lose your rights as a human being if you go along with 15-minute cities, including the model is China. They've got central bank digital currency. China, if you go 5 kilometers from your house, guess what? Your money doesn't work. If you didn't take your recent shot, your money doesn't work. If you ate too much meat last month, your money doesn't work. That's what 15-minute cities are about. That's where we're headed.
So you're saying that's why they want to digitalize money now also. They want to
That's right.
Virtual money.
It's all about control. And that's what you just told me about. And you're absolutely right. All of this is designed to control people. Why? Because at the end of the road, the control leads to our demise. Because the premise of this whole thing is that humans are bad. Humans are hurting the environment. Humans got to go. We're going to confine them and we're going to get rid of them.
Okay, I want to ask you, can you send me the link or to the source where it says that they want human beings to get 20,000 vaccines?
Sure.
Okay, because I want to have everything sourced so people can
see.
And okay, all right. So let's just jump off on the last point that you made, that in China, if you go 5 kilometers away from your home, your money doesn't work. That's what you said?
Right. It's programmable money.
Okay, so what happens when someone wants to visit a relative, they want to fly away for a vacation? Do they have to apply for a permit like they used to have to do in the USSR or in Russia?
Unless you have enough carbon credits. So if you look at your airline ticket today, you'll see that there are carbon credits on it. You'll see that they are attaching a carbon cost to everything that we do, every human activity. And this is part of the process whereby they are digitizing everything and putting it onto the blockchain. Every living thing on this planet is moving to the blockchain so that they can track it and they can assign a carbon rating to it. FTX in the Bahamas, funny enough, that's my backyard, was a carbon trading platform whereby human input and output of carbon is going to be commoditized and traded. So the answer is, and they do this in China already, what's your social credit score, which is dependent upon your carbon footprint. So if you eat less meat, you have more carbon credits, you can now travel to go see your relatives over here. You can use the train, but not an airplane, right? And so there are 2 classes of people. There are those who are exempt from this whole thing, and then there's the rest of humanity, right? It's the same thing flying airplanes right now. I'm a pilot. During the COVID lockdowns, I flew 5 times across the United States, one side to the other. And you know what? Never once did I wear a mask. Never once did I have a test. And I sure as hell didn't have a shot. Why?
So you're the
Because
elite.
I flew privately. I'm an elite. I'm in the 1%, and I'm exempt from all of this. How is that fair?
Well, you know, some animals are more equal than other animals, right?
Yeah, Animal Farm is a great
Farm,
book.
right. All right. In these 15-minute cities, I understand that in order to make them work, they also have to have a massive camera system watching every license plate that goes down the street, watching people. What do you
Well,
know about that?
Yuval Noah Harari already said it. He said to all of us, we're moving intelligence, we're moving observation inside the body. So that happened. In the military, there was a test for COVID. It was 44,000 service members and their families. It's C459-1001. Look it up for yourself. They used something called an EPCR device. It was called an in-touch e-diary, such that when these people got the shots, they were throwing off signals captured by this EPCR device on radio waves from things happening inside of people's bodies, cellular changes happening inside of people's bodies. That information was sent to a company in Israel. It was then laundered and they removed all the bad data and they sent it back to the FDA, Pfizer, and they got their conditional approval for emergency use authorization based on fudged data. The point of which is that technology already exists. Those that got the shots are already providing intelligence from the inside. They don't need cameras. You are a camera. Every person that got the shots is a cloud computing node, and they are hooked into the system thanks to the hydrogel in the shots.
Okay,
already.
You need to explain that. You need to explain that again. You're saying, so I understand you, that every person who got the COVID shot is now a cyborg?
Yes, that's right. In fact, if you look at and I sent it to you.
Yeah.
I sent this to you already, and you look it up. There's a position paper by the Ministry of Defense of both UK and Germany, and I sent you the NASA Langley research paper from 2001.
I looked at it.
And what you see on page 2 is they call the new species created by this Borg. And the answer to the question, this is why I'm telling you, the existing case in the United States, if you got the gene modification technology through mRNA, the holding of the case, this is good law of the United States, is that you, the product of these shots, are number one, no longer human. Number two, you are a synthetic product belonging to the patent holders, means you're chattel property. You're no longer a human with human rights. You belong to somebody. That is what I'm trying to explain to you.
Yeah, that I've heard that before, but I'm trying to understand. You're saying that they don't need cameras because everybody who was shot up with this, as I understand it, some type of metallic material, those black things. If anyone's seen those
nanobots
videos in the blood, that these things, I mean, they're not cameras. How do they keep track of that?
Well, because we as humans are in fact the cameras. We're seeing, we're hearing, we're throwing off all kinds of data to the cloud now, because these people that got the shots have become cloud computing nodes. I'll be happy to send you all the patents that go with this, but it was already demonstrated. We know it already happened because of C459-1001. That was the test where they actually demonstrated this technology.
All right, that is new to me, so I have to kind of like digest that. I'm gonna pass that right now, because let's go back to the 15-minute cities, and maybe another time we. Well,
it's all related, because
okay.
When you asked about surveillance in the 15-minute cities, and what I'm saying to you is they already have it. The people that got the shots are already surveilled from the inside.
I just don't understand
like Noah Harari said.
I just don't understand how there's cameras that these black metallic particles that they're finding in people's bloodstream.
What is the point of a camera? It's to detect things. It's to get information. Whether it's a camera or a microphone is immaterial if your body is serving the same purpose.
So you're not saying that the black particles are cameras. You're saying that when they walk past, let's say, certain antennas or something, then you're saying that this would be like they would know where you are because of the
data in your body, sight, sound, thinking, all of that stuff gets transmitted into a cloud. You are a cloud computing node. That's the technology.
I've heard that that's what they would like to
They've already tested
advance
it.
to, but I haven't seen.
C-459-1001 was a test study on 44,000 military people and their families, service members and their families. They already tested it. In Touch, e-diary, ePCR device.
And everything you're saying, everything that they're thinking is going into a cloud?
Yeah, it's everything. It's all of your data. It's your biorhythms. It's everything. And I'll be happy to send you the papers.
I can see how they can know your heart rate. Maybe they can know if you're anxious or things like that. But to know what you're thinking,
yes, the technology already exists. They have look, the IRS has a pre-crime division. How? Why? Because they can already predict human behavior down to that finite level.
Okay, I can
How can they predict it? Because it is all about big data. So if they're taking all of the data from inside of your body, they can predict everything about you, including what it is you're thinking and what it is you're going to do. All of that technology exists today.
But it's still a guess. It's not like they know.
No, it is not. It is they know. Of course they know. So for instance, I had some clients. I'll give you an example. I had some clients who didn't take the shots. They got fake shot cards and they were traveling internationally. Guess what? They got stopped at the border. Why and how? Because the border people knew that they hadn't taken the shots, even though they got the card that said they did. It's in the hydrogel, SM102 in the case of Moderna, and ALC0315 and 3015 in the case of Pfizer. In the hydrogel, something called luciferase, amongst other things, including cesium-137, other components that
but when you're saying that the guards are in on this, I mean, I don't think that the guards know about this.
What they know is whether or not you've had the shots.
Okay.
They know remotely.
Until then,
that's what I'm trying to say to you, is that all of the material, all of the data inside of you, if you've already got the shots, I think it's 3 or more before the. In fact, this is what Moderna said. They're doing a hardware installation. Right? They said that in the very beginning in their SEC filings. So the point of which is these people have been genetically modified into a cloud computing node, right? And all of that information, all that data inside of that node, that chattel property, that person who is no longer human for purposes of the law, no longer enjoys any rights, is now transmitting data that they are able to receive. That's what I'm telling you.
That I can understand. Okay, let me ask you, getting back to more to the 15-minute cities, a person who has a job that's more than 15 minutes away, and he has to, or she has to, travel back and forth. What happens there?
Well, there's a few things. Number one, what makes you think with this level of control they're going to be allowed to have such a job? And number two, part of this rollout is the introduction of universal basic income. You're seeing that happen around the planet right now, such that people will not have to work. If you own nothing and you're going to be happy, you get universal basic income. You don't necessarily have to have a job, do you? So no different than the Soviet Union, people's jobs were dictated to them by the government. What makes you think something different would be the case here? If they have control over every aspect of your life, including what you eat, including where you get to go. Would you like to have bugs for breakfast? You know, that level of control, what possibly makes you think you're going to be able to freely choose what occupation you
have? Okay, that's a good argument. I like that. Okay. Let me ask you about well, let me look at the traffic restrictions we talked about. You said that.
What traffic? Cars aren't. You can look at the 15-minute cities in England right now. They're blocking the roads. It's when they say 15-minute cities, you're walking 15 minutes. There's nothing about driving. You look at the airline industry. I was doing criminal defense work about 3 years ago in Europe for a pilot that had some problems. And as part of that case, I discovered that the European nations intended to close all airports but one for each country by 2030, and there would be no airports allowed, no commercial airports allowed by 2050. What does that tell you? They are shutting down airline transport because a 15-minute city wouldn't be compatible with people flying across the globe, would it? They're killing the airline industry on purpose.
Okay, and they're doing this because they have more control over people if they don't travel, because...
Right.
Because fill in the blank.
Because they are, number one, property, and those people, according to the patents, perform a function. If you look at Bill Gates' patent, and I'll send it to you, it's Microsoft patent. I call it Bill Gates. You will find that by and through the introduction of this gene modification technology and turning people into a cloud computing node, people will earn carbon credits by simply being a computing device, that they will harness people's ability to provide data mining for which they'll earn carbon credits, right? So in terms of your job, it may just be sitting there doing nothing. Your body will calculate these things. And likewise, there will be carbon debits for activities that you did. If you went on a hike, it's going to cost you. If you ate meat, that's going to cost you. The point of which is, why would they allow their cloud computing nodes, their property, to travel? You want them on station doing their job, data crunching. That's the new currency of this world, is data. Why would they possibly let you do that? And you've got to make the shift in your mind. You're no longer a human. You don't get free will, right? Noah Harari and what's his name, Klaus Schwab already said, free will is over, right? You are property. You will do as you're told. You have no rights. And we already saw this. Look, as a lawyer, when we sued, when I say we, there's a bunch of colleagues and we've sued all over the planet seeking redress to enforce our human rights under various international commitments, including the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, the International Convention on Human Rights. The courts have refused to hear the cases. We are cut off from any redress. Why? Because the apparatus is all in on this. And the answer is, these countries all agreed to this previously in the 2005 International Health Regulations. And they agreed to this by multilateral conventions in something called the Agenda for the 21st Century. So they are transforming humanity into property.
Explain to our listeners why countries would agree to this.
Because the predicate is the same. The predicate is that there are too many humans and we're destroying the planet, and that we've got to reduce the population. And so in 1994 in Cairo, at the Population Accords, they all agreed to effectuate population reduction by 7 billion people. If you were to agree that, how would you go about doing it? Would you have the military? Would you make it a military operation? Would you try and convince people to do this themselves, to effectively commit suicide? Would you fool them into thinking that they were doing something good? All of those things are happening with the use of COVID and these shots for the purpose of two things, really. Number one, reduction in population, and two, transformation of people into assets. Get rid of people. We're the problem, right? That's what the countries agreed. And they agreed this by international convention. It's all done by international law. And it's all signed. I mean, they wrote this down, Tamar.
Right. I want to go into the marketing of this, because usually they want people to go along with it so they don't have to fight them. And I've seen things when they talk about they're going to have trafficless main streets. They're going to basically make them into outdoor pedestrian malls. They're going to stop the traffic in these places.
15-minute walking cities.
And
There's
they say
cars.
it's going to prevent pollution, et cetera, et cetera. Somebody
Oh, by the way,
yeah.
Wouldn't you stop airplanes if you wanted to prevent pollution? Right? Wouldn't you stop that too?
Yes, but I think a lot of people wouldn't agree to that. They would fight that because they travel for a living, or they want to see their family.
How exactly are they going to fight that? When the courts are cut off, how exactly are they going to fight that? Who is going to hear their case?
Well, when people don't get justice, they often go into the streets, right?
And we're seeing that, are we not? Right? And that's what you're seeing right now. People are going through that.
But in the meantime, the establishment,
not all of them, are seeking the only redress they can, and that is disobedience.
I'm losing you a little bit on the internet. You're kind of like lagging. But I just want to ask you, when they're marketing it as something that's really going to be helpful and make your life much more quality living, you'll have green spaces instead of a busy trafficy street. You can 15 minutes, everything is at your grasp. And most people are the establishment, and the establishment usually believes that their government has their best interests and they want things to stay the same. They don't want anybody rocking the boat because they have to make a living, they have to bring home money, and they want to continue their lifestyle, and all of these things that they're hearing. What are you talking about? These 15-minute cities aren't good. What are you talking about? It's not going to improve our lifestyles. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're crazy. What would you answer them?
How did, in fact, Israel being one of the first, how did that work out for you? How did those COVID shots work out for you? Everybody's sick and dying that took them. Your government lied to you. What makes you think they've got your best interests in mind? If you took 3 shots, you're walking dead. They fooled you on purpose. They have killed you on purpose. And somehow you think they're benevolent and are going to put you in a 15-minute city for your best interest? Are you kidding me?
Todd, in World War II, during the Holocaust, the Nazis marketed being a slave as Arbeit macht frei.
Yeah.
Work makes you free. And people want to live, and they'll hang on to anything that they can get. And I've talked with people trying to convince them that they have to do their own research and not just blindly trust the government.
That's right.
They don't believe it. Again, because they're in the establishment. Now, I'm the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. So my father always taught me, question.
Everything.
All
God
right?
bless
But
him and you.
But most people don't. Most people, it's just too ugly to believe that your own government would not care about you and even hurt you. So how do you convince someone? I mean, you're giving this information, and I'm sure that a lot of the people watching this interview are going to say, this is crazy. What are cyborgs and blah, blah, blah. And they're just going to, change the channel.
Well, I hope that but on that note, I really want you to make sure and you present the papers that I've already sent you to demonstrate this is so. I prove everything I say because I'm a lawyer and that's my job, is to make my case. Everything I've told you, I can prove to you and will. Some of it I've already sent to you already. And so this is the problem, is that the lie is so big, the conspiracy, because that's what this is so big. It's a criminal enterprise to destroy humanity. And people don't want to believe it. Well, do you believe in Lucifer? Do you believe in God? Do you believe there's good and evil? Evil is amongst us. Evil, look, our faiths talk about end days, and this sure looks like those end days. Why would we not believe it? Because it requires us to do something, right? If we want to survive, we actually have to do something, even if that's research. And if that research leads to the truth, which is what I'm telling you, then you got to do something about it. What does that look like? You got to go on the streets. You got to take your country back. You have to take your domain and your sovereignty back. And that's a lot of work.
And you got to lose
reality,
friends.
Tamar, the reality, Tamar,
and you have to suffer being censored,
lazy. Exactly. And so you wonder how it was that 6 million Jews were killed in World War II. Because others allowed it to happen, because we allowed it to happen, because we abdicated, because we had apathy as a species. That's why. What makes us think they wouldn't do it again? You look at China, Pol Pot, Stalin. How many times in history have we seen hundreds of millions of people killed, and somehow we can't believe that our government would do this? Are you kidding me? I mean, wake up.
Well, that's what people need to do. But I think that most people don't want to wake up again, because I think that if they did, the reality would be so ugly for them that they wouldn't even want to live in this world. So just keep your eyes closed and keep pretending everything's going.
What about your kids? What about your grandkids? You want them to have a shot at life? If you do, get off your ass, because you got 2 choices. We're all going to die. Your choice is you fight for humanity's survival. This is an extinction level event. Or you go dig a hole in the backyard and wait for the end. Take your pick. It's one or the other.
It's kind of like boiling the frog, right? You do it slowly. You put him in cold water, and slowly he heats up slowly, and then he doesn't realize he's being killed, and then he's dead. And it's too late. All right. Is there any last point? Are there any last points or anything you want to leave us with?
God gave us really one gift, and that's free will. Right, our own sovereignty. At the end of the day, that's what this is about. When I sued the DoD, hundreds of thousands of service members wanted to join our plaintiffs class. My law firm was just inundated with people. Please help us, please help us. And what we ended up doing, Tamar, the way we beat the DoD wasn't my lawsuit. The way we beat them is we empowered the service members with legal tools. We said, here's how you file a complaint. Here's how you file an exemption. And we put 5 templates out or so. 400,000 service members papered the holy hell out of the DoD. They stopped the biggest killing machine on the planet by standing up for themselves and saying no. So the answer to 15-minute cities is no. We're not going along with it. Governments know that they must have the consent of the governed. The answer is no, I'm not doing it. Take a page out of your 2-year-old's handbook. No, that's my advice. And by the way, one last thing, make friends with the people in uniform. Look, there is no law without law enforcement. These laws are coming that will force you into these cities. But if people understand that this is against human rights, we can educate people who would be tasked with enforcing the laws so that they understand they are also marked for destruction. And if they understand that, we can all say no together.
You know, there's one more question I have that you brought it up. There's talk about, how do you force people who are living in the more rural areas? How do you force them into the big cities where they have these 15-minute cities? And
toxic spills.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask you, because some people are talking about the Ohio train crash,
that's right,
et cetera. These are ways to get people to have to leave their homes, and then
well, because the government confiscates them. It's under CERCLA liability. The law is already there. If there's any toxin whatsoever, the government gets to take your property, and good luck fighting them. So but they've carved it out for themselves, by the way. Now that any government agency can own that property, irrespective of how much contamination is on it. Just you as a private citizen don't get to do that. So what they did is they made Cleveland a 15-minute city, the first 15-minute city in the United States. All those people in Ohio are being offered a change. Give us your farm, we'll find you a place in Cleveland. That's already happening. It's not speculation, Tamar. It's happening.
So the government is giving free housing to people who had to leave?
They're offering an exchange. They're offering an exchange. That's right. We'll take your property so that you don't have to clean it up, because the homeowner is jointly and severally liable for the damage. Doesn't matter who caused it. That's the way the CERCLA law
So in
reads.
other words, in order to get you out of debt because you're responsible for the cleanup, they're offering new places where they want you to be.
That's
so
right.
It couldn't be that someone could just move and go to another rural area, because then they
No,
could,
you
but then
got to
they're
go to
stuck with
15-minute
paying.
city.
Then they're
That's
stuck
right.
with paying these. That's interesting.
That's
I
right.
didn't know that. Wow, it's very interesting. Am I allowed to share the attachments?
Please, I beg you.
Okay.
Share them all. I'm going to send you more. And I just pray, out of anything that comes out of this, for people to take the initiative to research themselves. I'm going to give you the information. You can see it with your own eyes. Whether you believe it or not is up to you, but it's all there. All of these people actually wrote this down, right? It's been studied. We're in the execution phase. So the question goes back to, what are you going to do about it? And the answer is, say no. We're not doing this.
Yeah, but saying no, I mean, what is the, in other words, I can sit here and say no from today till tomorrow. There has to be some type of action. No, but there has to be some type of action. The government doesn't care if everybody sits in their homes and says no.
Did you get turned into a new species?
I thank God did not. I did not take the.
Well, there's your answer. Did you say no?
I did.
It starts with saying no.
I see.
And that's the first step. And from there, look where you are now, right? You started with, no, I'm not taking the shots, to holy cow, we got to do something about that. If we can raise up, 1 million people to do the same thing and say no, file lawsuits, paper the holy hell out of our governments like the service members did, that's how you stop this. But it starts with saying no.
I hear you. Okay. All right. So Todd, if anybody wants to contact you, do you have a website or any contact if you want to give out? Lots of them.
Regrettably, so you can find what I'm up to most of the time with our dedicated websites, VaxChoice, VAXChoice.com. I'm the CEO of Cloud Hub, which is a social media platform. You can find me there, what it is that I'm doing, because I'm doing that every day. And then my law firm is Disabled Rights Advocates. It's a Colorado law firm, but we practice really all over the planet with other lawyers. It's dradvocates.com. So all of those places you can find me.
All right. And if anybody wants any of the sources that Todd was talking about, you can email us at info@israelnewstalkradio.com, and just in the subject title, put in 15-minute cities. And
they're also at VaxChoice. VaxChoice is a repository. It's a library of everything I just said and more.
Okay. That's VAXX choice.com, right?
That's right.
Okay. All right. We will do that. Thank you.
Tamar, you're a superstar. Thank you for having me. Thank you for lending your platform to me.
All right, Jason has a question for you. Jason, you want to come on?
Yeah. Hi, Todd. How are you?
Beautiful. I'm wonderful, Jason. Thank you for your help today.
Great. No problem. I know that there's always big talk in the United States with respect to the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
Okay, so I figured, that part of what you're saying, I guess, would go hand in hand with that the government wants to take away people's guns,
Sure.
right? Because the people can then fight back against the government with their guns.
That's right.
The opposite, however, is happening here in Israel, where because of the terrorism that we're constantly seeing, we have certain ministers like Ben Gvir and others who have opened the door and allowed more and more people to get guns easier.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So, that's my question is, how would that sort of, not that I'm not playing devil's advocate, but I mean, as more and more people, let's say in Israel, let's say, get more and more guns, how would it be factor into with what you're saying, like in terms of if these 15-minute cities were attempted on Israel?
Exactly. Boy, what a great point. So first and foremost, an armed society is a polite society. I was early in my career a prosecutor, and when Colorado brought on laws that did the same thing, made it easier for people to carry their weapons, concealed carry. In fact, as a matter of fact, 30% of violent crime dropped. So I'm a huge proponent of arming your citizens, not just for that reason, but for the very reason you talk about. And that is that when you say no to your government, you actually have the ability to back that up, especially if all of society says no together and all of society is armed. Your government works for you. When you are unarmed, you belong to your government. You're a subject. But when you are armed, your government works for you. That's the right way to go about running a society.
All right.
Great.
Thank you so much. Hey everyone, to make sure you can get access to all of our interviews, make sure to hit the subscribe button on both our YouTube and Rumble channels. Your click makes us all stronger. Thanks.